Welcome back to another fun and exciting episode of Space Nuts, the podcast that is out of this world.
15 seconds. Guidance is internal. 10, 9. Ignition sequence start.
Space Nuts.
5, 4, 3, 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Space Nuts.
Astronauts report it feels good.
And I'm your host for this American summer and Australian winter. And my name is Heidi Campo, filling in for Andrew Dunkley. And joining us is the wonderful Professor Fred Watson, astronomer at large. How are you doing, Fred?
Very well, thank you, Heidi. I've been travelling since we last spoke and have explored the great state of Western Australia in great detail. If I remember rightly, Western Australia would encompass Texas 3 times. I think that's the figure. It's very large. And so we spent a lot of time in coaches, but saw some incredible sights, including the Carnarvon Space facility, which was one of the places where radio signals were picked up and beamed out to the world during the Apollo era. So lovely to visit some of the places where history was made at a time when I was, a young astronomer, a young budding astronomer, and very excited by the whole thing. So it's great to see all that old technology again.
Yeah, there's just something special about the old technology, the way it looked and felt and was packaged. And the new, sleek, modern stuff is cool and great, but it just doesn't feel the same.
That's right. Well, when they get fashion designers to design their spacesuits, you know that things have moved on quite a long way since the Apollo era.
It really has changed. But one thing that will never change until it does is our fascination with extraterrestrials, which leads us into our first story today. So I don't know if this is the 3I or the 3 lowercase l Atlas. Harvard's thinking maybe alien probe. What's going on here, Fred? Give us some sanity.
Yeah. So 3I, it is 3I because it's the third interstellar visitor that has been recorded. There are probably many more that we haven't detected, but this is an object which is flying through the solar system. We have talked about it before, and we're going to talk about it again just because of a couple of things that have come up. So let's the bottom line: 3I Atlas. Atlas was the facility that discovered it. It's an object which is whizzing through the solar system at about 60 kilometers per second in an orbit that tells you immediately that it has come from outside the solar system. It's not in any sense gravitationally bound to the sun. So it's not part of the sun's family of planets. It's from somewhere else. We don't know where it came from, and is whizzing through the solar system. If I remember rightly, it passes closest to the sun. I think it is October. It's certainly down the track. Yes, it's closest approach in October. So it's probably a comet. A comet is an object made of ice with dust embedded in it. The thing about comets is when they get near the sun, the ice turns into a gas, and we see the result of that often stretched in a tail across the sky, which makes them very bright occasionally, and also occasionally quite inspiring to people who don't know what they're looking at, which is why they were often regarded as portents of doom in historical times. So this one, however, is probably not going to do that. It may be a comet. It's thought to be about 20 kilometers across, which is actually quite large for the nucleus of a comet. But the reason why I wanted to bring it up again is it's the headline that I almost could have predicted. Is interstellar object 3I Atlas an alien probe? Harvard physicist sparks debate. And that Harvard physicist is a very eminent astrophysicist. I think he's still the director of the Harvard-Smithsonian Institute for Astronomy. His name is Avi Loeb, and he is famous for always putting a slant which could be interpreted as suggesting, I'm going a long way around this because I want to be careful with my words, that things like this could have an intelligent origin. We had the same when the first of these interstellar visitors came by back in 2017. An object called Oumuamua, named after it's a Hawaiian name meaning first visitor from afar, which is a lovely name. An interesting object, only 100 meters or so across. We didn't discover it until it was on its way out of the solar system. It's probably shaped a bit like a pancake from the light curve, the way the light was reflected off it. But I think Avi very quickly found what he thought was evidence that this thing perhaps had an extraterrestrial intelligence origin. And exactly the same thing has happened with 3I Atlas. His reasoning, though, I think is really interesting. And that is the couple of curious coincidences in regard to the orbit of 3I Atlas. And remember, this is an open orbit. It's just a pathway through the solar system. It's not like an ellipse or a circle. It's going almost in a straight line. In fact, it's going so fast. But what Avi Loeb has noted is that this object will actually pass close to Mars, Venus, and Jupiter. And so what Avi has done is a statistical test on the likelihood of that. And he estimates that the chance of this path occurring naturally by chance is 0.005%. And another little feature of this, as I mentioned, the object actually passes closest to the sun in October. It's actually the 29th of October. And it turns out that when that is the case, it will be on the other side of the sun from the Earth. It'll be hidden from the Earth. And so Avi goes as far as to suggest that that is perhaps so that it does not get detected, to avoid detection. Now, I think that one's stretching it a little bit too far, but I do think it's interesting that the interstellar comet, if that's what it is, passes close by those three planets that I just mentioned. Whether it is proof that it's an alien visitor is another story.
Well, I guess we'll find out.
Well, we might not, although so you know what happens when something like this goes by is that all the world's telescopes concentrate on it, because it's something that you've only got a limited time frame to do. So there's a big interest in bringing together lots of telescopes that can observe this object and look at it in great detail with our spectrographs and things of that sort, which analyze any gases that are coming from it, perhaps give us an idea of the sort of surface that it has. So those things will be being looked at over the next month or so, a couple of months. But whether we will find enough evidence to demonstrate that it has an intelligent origin is a different story, because we could learn all sorts of things about it and still not have that answer. So I think it's one that Space Nuts will keep an eye on over the next few months. And yes, if it turns out to have windows or spikes coming out of it or things like that, our Space Nuts audience will be the first to know about it.
Absolutely. You'll always hear it here first.
Okay, we checked all four systems and keying with a go.
Space Nuts.
Well, our next story is, I guess, a little bit less fringe alien stuff, but still odd and still relevant to, everything that we're looking at with space. But we're talking about how space weather affects scientists here on Earth. So this is the article is saying the weather has been influencing human behavior on Earth since years and years and years ago. But this one's a little bit interesting.
It is. I think this is a lovely story. I always relish stories that bring together quite unrelated disciplines in science, which this one certainly does, because it brings together geophysicists, people who study space weather, and also archaeologists, people who study the ancient history of our species. And it's actually a conversation article that sparked my interest on this, which is written by three authors from uh, um, the United States, two from the University of Michigan, one from the Helmholtz Center for Geosciences. That might actually be not in the United States, but anyway, that's another story. So we've got these scientists who have looked at the evidence for the behavior of the Earth's magnetic field in geological time. Now, we know from quite reliable sources, namely basically the magnetic details of ancient rocks on the ocean bed, we know that the Earth's magnetic history has been very varied, and about 3 or 4 times every million years, the Earth's poles flip. So that and these are the magnetic poles, not the rotation poles. The Earth still rotates in the same axis, but the magnetic poles flip, and we think that's to do with the relationship between the solid core of the Earth and its liquid core. These two things mix together, and they produce a magnetic field, which occasionally basically declines, and then when it returns, it's pointing the other way. It's a different magnetic pole. And it's been known because of evidence like that from seabed rocks and things of that sort, that there was a time about 41,000 years ago when the magnetism of the Earth basically dwindled away to something like 10% of its current intensity. So we've got a magnetic field that is not offering the same protection from the solar wind as it does today, and that would lead to a number of things. One of which would be the occurrence of aurorae, the northern and southern lights, a long way from the poles, because as the magnetic field dwindles, these subatomic particles are not funneled into the polar regions of the Earth as they are now, but they go to much lower latitudes. And so I think they've asked the question, what would that do to our distant forebears if they are watching the sky? They might well see aurorae, northern and southern lights, which had never been seen before at their latitudes. And so archaeologists have now looked at this, and basically they imagine people seeing a green sky, a sky that's got really bright aurorae. Now, in archaeology, a sort of response to something like that is really not easy to capture, because there's nobody writing and saying, "Oh, we saw a green sky," that we can still read today. It's not that sort of, not at that sort of level. So you've got to look for perhaps more circumstantial evidence for the fact that the space weather was causing a different sky from what they had before. And the paper that's been written on this is actually it pinpoints something that perhaps otherwise would not be understood, and that is that the use of ochre, which is a sort of powdery rock, very, very well known in Australia. It's a reddish rock because our First Nations people used it and still do use ochre for body markings. It washes off, of course, but it's a way of decorating your body. And it turns out that period 41,000 years ago coincides with an increased use of ochre by the people who lived at that time. And the way they interpret this is that ochre actually is a kind of natural sunscreen. I don't know what its SPF factor is, but if you put ochre on, you've got a sunscreen that will protect you a little bit from the increased ultraviolet radiation, which we would expect to find hitting the Earth at a time when the magnetic field was weak. So what they're suggesting is that the risk of sunburn, eye damage, and other health issues may have been mitigated by people discovering that if you rub more ochre on, you're actually more likely to be protected from these phenomena. And it is
Wow.
interesting that at the time when we know the magnetic field was letting through much more radiation from the sun, we see people using more ochre on their bodies, perhaps for protection. A really interesting, piece of research that brings together two apparently completely unrelated fields.
Well, that's why, a word that I throw around so often is interdisciplinary. And I think
Yeah.
it's so, so, so important because nobody lives in a vacuum. Even something as simple as mathematics touches everything. Well, I guess math wasn't a very good because it does touch everything, but any field is going to be related to every other field. And I was on a call, I joined a bioastronautics journal club recently, and we were talking about some research that had come out, and it was brought up that extreme conditions has already been kind of defined, and there's already protocols in place with submarine usage and people who summit high mountains, and that there's already so much that we can learn from things that we already do here on Earth. So
Yep.
it is interesting. I think it is important for us to not live in our little bubbles and our little boxes, but we still have to go outside and talk to other people. Funny little just a anecdote, side tangent, and then we'll move on. Is there was um, a ancient statue that archaeologists couldn't figure out what was going on with the hair on. It was of a woman, and they're like, well, was it artistic? Why does the hair look this way? They couldn't figure it out. And then a modern day hairdresser was like, oh, it was sewn in. It was hair extensions that were sewn in. You're
Ah,
seeing a marble statue of somebody who had sewn
so
hair extensions on, but the archaeologist couldn't figure it out. But the hairdresser looked at that immediately and was like,
yeah,
well, of
yeah,
course that's what that is.
yeah,
So I just think that was kind of a funny little
yeah.
example.
That's a really interesting one. Actually, makes you wonder what the person of whom the statue was made was like. Whether they were somebody who was vain about their hairstyle, or whether it was something necessary because other reasons would make you keep your hair short. For example, if you were doing military things and stuff like that. Interesting stuff, yeah. But again,
Yeah.
you're quite right. Interdisciplinary. It's a great word.
Zero G, and I feel fine.
Space nuts.
Well, speaking of, I guess this last one's not really so interdisciplinary. It's dramatic and it is very in its own little niche field. But the title is A Cosmic Death Spiral. Astronomers catch planet in its final orbit before destruction. This is a very dramatic story, but Fred, I know that you always bring reason and logic and peace to all of these stories. So, what's going on with this dramatic death spiral?
Well, it's a death spiral. That's right. And I like this story because it's research that's been done by astronomers in the university that I'm associated with here in Australia, Macquarie University in Sydney. And so what they've done is looked at it's actually a very well studied exoplanet with the marvelous name of TOI 2108b. It's about 900 light years away. It's extreme in the sense that it is an object that orbits its parent star closer than any other known planet. Its year, i.e., the time it takes to go around its star, is 16 hours. So it whizzes round its parent star. It's very close to it, so it is. It's bathed in radiation from the star. It's what we call a hot Jupiter. It's actually bigger than Jupiter and is essentially, as I said, bathed in the radiation of its parent star. It's very, very hot. So that situation that you've got this object going around its parent star once every 16 hours is telling you that that orbit is untenable in the long term. The orbit is going to decay, and what the scientists have studied is basically the mechanics of that. How will the orbit decay? Will this planet just get gobbled up by its star, or will it get flung away in a random direction? How's it going to work? And so what they've done is they've looked at data that goes back to 2010 to look for changes in the orbit of this planet. And there's details that they've found that can suggest that there might be three different ways that it could reach the end of its life. Either, number one, it gets torn apart as it gets closer to the star, because what you have is this phenomenon called tidal disruption. It's where the planet, part of the planet that's nearer to the star, feels a much bigger gravitational force than the other side, and that tends to pull the planet to pieces. So that's one scenario. The other one is that it might just disappear into the star. In other words, just get sucked into the star. And we know that happens because we've seen evidence of it in other solar systems. We've seen brightening of a star that seems to be caused by a planet basically impacting on it. And we can also find evidence in the atmospheres of stars for the sorts of chemicals that you would only find in a planet, but not in the star itself. So we know that happens. But the other one is perhaps the most interesting one, the third of their possible end games for TOI 2109b, that it's a gas giant like Jupiter and Saturn are. And what they're suggesting is that perhaps its gaseous envelope, its atmosphere, might just be blown away by the radiation coming from the star and just essentially leave a planet that's still going around that parent star, but is now just a rocky remnant. It's not a gas giant anymore. So what people are going to look for is to see exactly how this behavior continues. The prediction is that the orbit of this planet is shortening by 10 seconds per year, the amount of orbital shortening that's going on at the moment. As time goes on, we will see the planet pass some kind of trigger point, a tipping point, where one of these three scenarios might become more obvious as to what's going to happen to it. Once again, we'll keep an eye on that with the Space Nuts, eagle eye on astrophysics and what's going on in the universe.
That planet sounds like your average grad student just circling in chaos, and they're either going to get flung out, never to enter that field again, or they're just going to get absorbed by it and become whatever it is that they're studying.
Yep, that's right. That's what you do. You become what you study.
Yeah. So I am nicknaming this planet the grad student.
I think it's a better name than TOI, whatever it was.
But
TOI, by the way, stands for TESS Object of Interest. TESS was a planet-finding satellite that was active for a few years.
And if it gets flung out into the universe, this could be our next alien spaceship.
Yes, that's right.
What is this thing? It's just a planet that got flung out of its orbit. Well, Fred, that wraps up this episode. That was kind of a fun, eclectic group of articles. Thank you so much for finding those and disseminating all of that information for us. We definitely appreciate you. And this is, I guess that's the end of our tale today. It's
a tale that's never ending, really, because there'll be other things to talk about. But yes, I look forward to next time, Heidi. Thanks very much.
All right. Catch you next time on our Q&A episode. That's all for now.
Hi, Fred. Hi, Heidi. Hi, Hugh in the studio. Andrew again with another update on our world tour. And we've done a heck of a lot since I spoke to you last. We went to, this was an amazing place, but then again, it wasn't, and I'll tell you why. But we were back in Morocco, and we docked in Tangier, and then we did a couple of hours drive to a place called the Blue City, where all the buildings are blue, and there's all sorts of reasons why they're blue that come up when you do a Google search. But the main reason that we were told was that one day somebody painted his house blue, and everyone went, well, that's a good idea. And so everyone else did. So that's why it's the Blue City. And everything's blue. Blue doors, blue buildings, blue fences, blue lights, blue everything. Not those kinds of blue lights. But, interesting place. Downside, oversaturated with hawkers and salespeople and high-pressure tactics. And it's a pretty smelly place, lots of mangy cats and dog poo everywhere. Yeah, nice place to visit, wouldn't want to live there. But and then we got caught up in a Palestinian protest that they were having. So that was a bit intimidating, I must say. Then we moved on to our next stop, which was Seville. Seville was really fantastic. We actually got to walk on a bull ring where they still have bullfighting today. Mixed opinions about the ethics of that, but getting to actually see it and stand on the ground where they do that was incredible. And quite a beautiful city. Really loved Seville. Most enjoyable. Our next stop took us to a really amazing place, Lisbon in Portugal, where we saw the monument to the explorers, the great names like Magellan and so on, and Henry the Explorer. And, of course, they've got a bridge there that looks uncannily like the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco. And going under that on the ship as we left was quite awe-inspiring because you look like you're going to hit it. Not much clearance between the top of the ship and the bottom of the bridge. They've got a giant statue of Jesus Christ there as well, like the one in Brazil. So we went up and had a look at that and went around the city and enjoyed Portuguese tarts, which are just so delectable. But we went to the original place where they were first made by the monks in 1837 or something. Oh my gosh! And it's like KFC. They don't tell you what's in them. And our next stop, I mean, we've done a lot of stops. Was the place where they found the location for one of the great scenes in Game of Thrones. Remember the castle Dragonstone? Well, we saw it, but there's no castle on top of the island. It's just a church. But that windy little passage up the stairs to the top is real, and I can't remember where it was now. We've been to so many places. Jude, can you remember where that was? Bilbao in Spain. That's right. Yeah, lovely place as well. Really great city. They have the Guggenheim Museum there as well, which we visited. That's right. And since then, we've been to France, and we did a day trip in a Volkswagen Combi to a vineyard. And that was our last stop. And just now, as I speak, we've parked the boat in Cork in Ireland. So we're going to spend the day there. We're going to do the Titanic Museum and have a look around town. We're here till 10 o'clock tonight, so we're going to probably do a bit of a visit to some Irish pubs and just sort of get into the atmosphere of the Irish. So we're looking forward to that. Should be great fun. Hope all is well back home. We've still got 1/3 of our trip to go. Looking forward to getting home, but having such a great time, we're not in a hurry. All right, catch you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.
Space Nuts. You've been listening to the Space Nuts podcast.
Mission complete, Houston.
Available at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or your favourite podcast player. You can also stream on demand at Bytes.com.
This has been another quality podcast production from Bytes.com.